So let's get into it. The biggest conflict there is whether or not these dominant positions are always dominant or always our best solution for dealing with the grounded engagement, especially when there are multiples or weapons as an opportunity or as a possibility. Because what is good in one context does not necessarily transfer into another context. And when we add in these other variables, it can be very dangerous. So typically where in a sport jiu-jitsu competition or in an MMA competition where getting mount or back control means pretty much the fight is very advantageous for the person who's on top. Things are going downhill rapidly for the person who's on the receiving end of those two positions. Once you add in these other variables, it's not as clear cut. Now that being said, it's better than being on the bottom, that is for sure. But are there better options? Is there a better position for me to be in that gives me more options than those two positions once you add in the other risk factors? And that's what I teach in the Red Zone GFO program. But it's not just me. Like, let's talk to my coach. So I'm actually going to grab this camera. We're going to go in and we're going to talk to my coach right now. So it's actually a jiu-jitsu class going on right this second, and we're going to go talk to people who know way more than me and talk about a little bit about how we drill this stuff. Coach, can I interrupt you?
In a second.
All right.
What do you got?
I want to talk a little bit about ground positioning with regard to a self-defense context where there are weapons and or multiple opponents as a threat.
As a rule, you definitely don't want to be on the ground, especially your back. But it does happen.
For sure. But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we value your two 4-point positions. So your mount or your back control as the dominant position, the go-to positions.
In one-on-one skilled combat, cross sides is the most stable, least amount of attacks. The mount is a little less stable, but way more attacks. The back attack is the safest because whether you're on bottom or top, you're still in a dominant spot. But if there's multiple opponents, you're kind of too bound on your opponent. And when you're bound to your opponent, you're still target. So it's like whether it's a foot to your head, fist to your head, a knife or a gun, if you're stuck on your opponent on the ground and here comes his buddies, it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Very nice.
And I actually have been knocked out once on the street, embarrassingly, in an altercation with 6, 17, and 18-year-olds when I was about 34 in a black belt, and I was trying to not hit them because I didn't want to cause any damage, which was my first major error.
But why didn't you just get up?
I would use the gentle art. I was controlling heads and necks, pushing guys away, maneuvering. A guy grabbed me behind my back and I had to end up on the ground, in which I mounted him. And it was the last thing I remember until ambulance and cops. One guy got stabbed and I had been knocked out by a kick in the back of my head while I was in a mount on the largest one of the guys who was I thought he was a teen, but he was actually an 18-year-old Marine.
All right, so here's what we're talking about. Is on top, this is great for me. I can do a lot of damage here. And on one-on-one interpersonal contact or combat, this is fine. But as I'm laying things in, if he knows he just has to kind of stall and survive this attack until his buddy gets out of the bathroom, we've got another problem. I can try and cross face out, but I'm gonna get reversed in here as I try and get up. Yes. And that's all we need. That's all he needs to do is stall me long enough for his buddy to get out of the back room. But that's easy to say. I'm on the ground with a freaking black belt, a fifth degree black belt. What am I gonna do that's gonna stop him? So let's reverse this real quick. Now, please, coach. Now, my job here is not to get my face punched off and to hold on as long as I can. All right? So go, coach. Go. Try to escape. Try to stand up. Try cross face. Do whatever you can. So,
I can't easily stand up. I've got strikes.
sort of.
Sort of. I mean, I may eventually cause enough concussion damage where I weaken you and you go from Jerry aging black belt to Jerry brown belt to Jerry purple belt to Jerry white belt and I get out. How long will that take?
And I am not making the argument that holding on for dear life is a good tactic from the bottom. What I'm saying is, if I know I have a buddy who's going to back me up, all I have to do is stall him long enough for him to back me up. So let's look at how that goes. Okay, so this is Coach Mitch. Mitch is a Muay Thai instructor, and he's also a purple belt under Coach Howder and under combat base. And what's going to happen is Mitch is my backup. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to set up the camera, and when Coach Howder says go, Mitch is allowed to come and back me up. So he's going to come get me. In fact, Coach, I'm going to actually yell your, come get me, so you know to come save my life, because I'm on the ground with a black belt.
What's your doctor?
Woot. There's my victim on the ground.
My sister hates when I do that. Drink something?
So try not to.
All right, Coach. Your job is to survive until your backup gets in.
Okay.
Come and get me, Mitch! Ouch! I didn't even hear you coming until you were there. All right, my turn now. And help me out, Mitch! Go get out. Where did you get this from?
Now here's the thing too. There are exceptions to every rule. And we're clearly both seasoned grapplers and strikers. And again, there are exceptions to every rule. But as a general rule, you want to be the guy on top, unbound to your opponent in the street.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is if it's a choice of having mount or being on the bottom, have mount. But there are other options that allow me more leeway to engage and disengage at will, and also to monitor his hands. If you have tools on you, if you're the kind of person who carries weapons on you, you need to monitor those things. And if I'm bound to my opponent, where he has access to my waistline and his waistline, it's a liability. I don't gain anything really. So I need to have that mobility in my top position. I need to be able to control his hands. I need to be able to move in and out of control and to be able to disengage if I want to. And that's why we emphasize more mobile controls as opposed to locking them down into a position where I do have very good control, but we're also a little interdependent. Okay, so that's kind of the idea we wanted to get across, which doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu is bad for the street. And it should be a word of warning for those who don't actually train on the ground to not take this video to mean you shouldn't be educated about the ground. And you shouldn't get your butt on the mat and get rolled up by some blue belts. Okay, if you don't have any game, you need to get game. But that being said, we want to make sure we maintain perspective. The rules of the game dictate the way it's played. So in any sport, whether it's sport jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, boxing, MMA, or outside the realm of sport into a survival situation. The more rules you add on, the more people can exploit those rules in their strategy. And when we train, when we take off all of the limiters and just go, let's go at it, we want to make sure that whatever our hierarchy of position, sustains itself throughout all of these variables so that we can actually rely on it should we have to. So thanks for checking out the video, and we'll see you next time.